Alrighty. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Morgan White. I'm a senior application engineer with Autotrader.com. Thank you for joining me today. So I've been with Autotrader for about 2 years now, and over the last 10 years I've had several different jobs in the IT industry. Anywhere from application engineer to developer to system administrator, you name it. I kind of jack of all trades type of thing, right? So in the last 2 years, I learned quite a bit about the automotive industry. And I think what surprised me the most was the tremendous amount of infrastructure needed to support it. And it's been a pretty eye-opening experience. So who am I? Why do you care? So today I do many things with AppDynamics, but my main job is supporting development in the business. I'm in operations. Developers are the reasons I have a job. But I kid, but seriously. So when I'm not breaking things in production myself, I spend about 75% of my day finding and investigating issues. The truth is, at one point, I myself was a developer, so I can understand the troubles that you go through and the things you deal with on a daily basis, and I think you do a great job considering. And it also allows me to appreciate the need for tools on both sides of the house. And so that's where AppDynamics really can join both sides. So after about 3 months in the job, Autotrader licensed AppDynamics. We needed someone to pioneer the proof of concept and integrate it in our ecosystem, and I figured, hey, this might be fun. I'll volunteer. Now I know not to volunteer for stuff. So some of you might be wondering who is Autotrader. You'd be surprised how many people ask that. But for those of you who aren't familiar with our brand, let me tell you a little about us. So Autotrader is an online marketplace for buying and selling cars. The site was started in 1997. We connect buyers and sellers together to foster a unique car buying experience. We're part of the Cox Automotive Media division of Cox Automotive. That's quite a mouthful there, isn't it? But we've been around for about 18 years now. We've definitely seen the ups and downs of the internet age. But we pride ourselves, we pride ourselves on being a household name in the automotive industry and a leader in our space. You may be familiar with some of our competition, Cars.com, Edmunds, eBay. Actually, on second thought, y'all probably don't know about that last one. I think it's pretty obvious, but we cater to people who want to buy and sell vehicles. So what's this all about anyway, right? So in the next hour, I'm going to take you through a journey of the evolution of AppDynamics with Autotrader. We'll talk about who Autotrader, why Autotrader was in the market, what issues we were experiencing, why we chose to look at AppDynamics, and how we use the tool today to deliver a world-class search experience. Hopefully, at least one of these topics interests you. If not, there are emergencies on both sides of the room and in the back. In the event of a boring speech, please file orderly out the door towards the nearest bar. And lastly, I apologize for all the redaction, all that fun proprietary business stuff. So. Autotrader had many tools which we used on a daily basis. We use it to monitor and investigate issues, but we couldn't quite connect all the dots. You'd go to one system, look at something, go to another, try to correlate it, and hope that you got your findings right. All of our tools, while they worked for the most part, they all had drawbacks, as everything does. You couldn't dig in deep in one, you couldn't correlate events in another, our monitoring wasn't catching everything, and so on and so on. We've been around long enough that we've gotten pretty good at finding root cause and resolving it, but AppDynamics has really helped us to speed up the process. And if AppDynamics has helped us do nothing else, it's given us one place to go for all of our investigative information. So why AppDynamics? Well, we were looking for a solution to our issues, and we looked at several different options. All the solutions that we looked at were definitely good competitors, but none really had all of the eggs in one basket for us. We only had a few important considerations, but AppDynamics was the most viable option considering. So firstly, Autotrader needed a good user experience. No tool is useful if you spend more time trying to use the darn thing than actually gathering data from it, right? So we wanted the ability to look at all our systems interacting so that we could see quickly how all the systems interacted, where the problems could come from, and find the issue quickly. Once we had that, we wanted a way to dig into that system and find what the problem actually was. And oftentimes, these root cause analysis was, we'd know that one system was working and this other system wasn't, but the reality is it was something entirely different that caused the problem in the first place. So lastly, we wanted a tool that could help us be more proactive and help us monitor these issues before they become customer impacting. And AppDynamics has really helped us do all this really well, sometimes too well. Once the system is set up properly, it really kind of almost runs itself. But enough about all the high-level what's and whys. Let's talk about the good stuff, shall we? So what does this tool do for Autotrader? Well, again, trying not to bore you guys. Let's talk about some of the key points of Autotrader's AppDynamics use on a daily basis. We'll talk about code optimization, dashboarding, being proactive with monitoring, alerts, emergency remediation, deployment vetting and verification, automation and performance testing, protection from third parties. Y'all know what I mean from that one. Native app optimization, and lastly, mobile site performance tuning and monitoring. So let's get into it, shall we? So code optimization. So we all know that optimizing our code can be a huge headache. It's full of testing, and more testing. However, the reality is it's a necessary evil. In the world today, speed is everything, right? I heard a quote once that for every second that your page takes to load, you lose 7% of your audience. That could add up quickly if you're having a bad day. In the case of Autotrader, every consumer we lose means lost advertising revenue. We do everything we can to speed up our code and optimize loading times, but nobody's perfect. AppDynamics has actually helped us quite greatly with this. And thanks to the method-level stack tracing that AppDynamics can do within the transaction snapshots, we're able to dig into our code and figure out what the problem really was and why it took too long. And I can remember a couple of examples where this has helped us determine what the root cause of the slowdown was. So here we have a call graph for our print ad listing service. We can quickly see that this service is taking an extraordinarily long time to execute. For those of you curious, this is from our Sell Your Car section of the site. We're actively working on optimizing this, but without AppDynamics, we probably would never have found exactly what was causing this. So here's another example. We were having some issues with a scraper hitting us for some data. We really couldn't figure out what the problem was because the web servers, all the stats in them looked okay. After digging into the code call graphs for it, we started to notice the extremely long call times to our search engine farm. And here you can see, obviously, a 3-second call to an HTTP post. We've increased our capacity and we tuned the queries to the search engine, and calls have come back down. As you can see, they're sub-second calls here. But honestly, I've actually found that I use these often to start my code diving, because many times there's classes in these code graphs that I didn't know exist from an operations standpoint, and I can't tell you how many times it's been useful to use these to find the source of a problem in some code. And we're not even all that custom instrumented, to be honest. So there's other times when our local code is optimized, but something else is slowing us down. 9 out of 10 times, it's a remote call of some sort. We're having an issue with our dealer profiler, and we couldn't understand what was taking so long, because the code to display this section of the site actually is relatively simple. We dug into a snapshot in AppDynamics, and lo and behold, we noticed that the extreme wait was actually a problematic call to our API gateway. This led us to one of our other tools, which immediately showed us what the problem was. For those of you wondering why we didn't just use AppDynamics to traverse the API gateway, it turns out that the third-party API gateway that we're using doesn't instrument well with AppDynamics. Well, can't win them all, right? So dashboarding. The next really useful feature that we use on a daily basis is AppDynamics dashboarding capabilities. The tool has a really cool, i.e. pretty and useful, or easy, approach to dashboards. You can get all the metrics that you have in the system and create all sorts of interesting graphs and data to display. One of the nicer things that we like about this fact is that we can take the boring metric numbers and we can make them easy to discern, share them out to executives, people in the company, for a quick understanding of what's going on. For all the developers out there, you want a good way to show the boss that you've fixed a defect you're working on and how much of an impact it had. This is a great way to do that. So this is an example of one of our actual dashboards we have in operations. We use this daily in our NOC to monitor overall health of our systems. Among other things that stood out with AppDynamics' approach to this was the ability to heavily customize the graphs in terms of color, sizes, shapes, different types of widgets. Other APMs we looked at could do dashboarding as well, but they didn't give us the flexibility and creativity that AppDynamics did. As you can see, we also have baselines on here. These baselines are actually really useful for our NOC so they can know when something's not right. On a side note, these baselines are rolling baselines based on the data that's given, but you can completely customize those based on what you feel the baseline should be for that service. So here's another dashboard that we use for our IT executives every day, IT executives. These metrics are on our major pages on Autotrader.com, as well as some of our other critical systems. You notice how easily we can determine if there's an issue? I found that the execs like that. They don't like having to wonder. Being quick and concise ends up being really good for them. So you can share these custom dashboards with all of your users easily as well. You don't have to have a bunch of special permissions to get into the APM. You can give them a URL, and even if they don't have access at all, they should be able to view these dashboards. This obviously, like I said, works really well with executives, gives them something quick and easy to use. Another note, you can create custom dashboards for each tier and node as well. And you don't have to share those as well, but information begs to be shared, right? So one last dashboard. This is another one of our NOC dashboards. We call this the traffic lights. It gives the NOC a quick view of the status of each of the systems. The lights are triggered by health rules. And those health rules could be any metric that your heart desires and set up an alert on them. In this case, we set them up for response times. We also have another one for server availability as well. So since we're talking about dashboards and monitoring, let's talk a little bit about proactive monitoring. Now, I know what you all might be thinking. All proactive monitoring is monitoring is proactive, right? Not exactly, The way we look at it, it really depends on the type of monitoring you're doing. In Autotrader's case, proactive monitoring is any kind of monitoring that helps us see the problems before they become an issue, as opposed to hey guys, there's a problem here. This kind of monitoring helps us see trends in our systems and compensate appropriately. So let me just tell you a story from our NOC. It's just another Tuesday morning. Not really different than any other Tuesday, except one thing. On this particular Tuesday, a change was introduced into one of our deployments that the operations teams wasn't told about. It's always a fun one to deal with, right? And our NOC guys were watching the AppDynamics graphs during the deployment and started noticing huge spikes in response times and errors. They immediately notified our deployment teams, who also noticed there was issues, and went ahead and rolled back the deployment to fix the problem. If it weren't for this proactive monitoring, we would have sent this code completely to production and caused all sorts of outages. Speaking of deployments, AppDynamics has been especially helpful for those. Right? We have regularly 3 to 4 systems being deployed on any given day, and a couple of features in the application have made this a much better experience than previously. During a given deployment, our NOC and operations teams are regularly looking at dashboards for any given systems that make sure that all is well. Before we had the dashboards to monitor this stuff, we relied kind of on our synthetic testing as well as our third-party alerting engine, and this got us into trouble a couple of times. So here you can see an example of one of our deployment dashboards for Autotrader.com. You can see there's a custom time frame down below. You can use compare releases to do this type of stuff, but what we've noticed is that compare releases is nice, but it doesn't give you all the flexibility that these custom dashboards do. There may be metrics that you would like to see in your deployments that you may not be able to see in the standard KPIs that you see in the compare release section. So alerting. So you might be sitting there thinking, that's all nice and all, but I don't want to have to monitor dashboards all day and night, and we don't have a NOC that can do that for us. Trust me, I've been there. I completely understand that one. It does get old really quick. Thankfully, AppDynamics actually has an extensive alerting set for keeping you in the loop. At Autotrader, we've actually utilized several mechanisms to keep us alerted, including text, emails, and SNMP. So a nice feature of the emails is that we've implemented custom email templates, and this is new with 4.1. This allows us to set up a few dynamic email alerts that fill in the necessary information based on the alert itself. We've chosen to put alert info as well as some next steps into our alerts, but obviously the options are limitless. I just created a sample template just so that you guys could see what they look like here. So I'm not sure if you guys are anything like me, but I tend to ignore emails to some degree. I know I can speak for the room when I say we all get too many emails to possibly keep up. It's because of this that we also set up text alerts. We decided that if there's an issue that was bad enough, determined by our health rules, of course, that we also need to send out text messages to the team. This application allows you to set up these text message alerts, putting a little bit of custom alerting at the top or custom text at the top. Right now, this feature is a little bit limited in the sense that the data that comes through is only somewhat configurable, but I've already put in an enhancement request for this, so we'll just have to see what comes with the next release. So our third safety net we set up at AppDynamics is sending SNMP traps. It sends it to a third-party monitoring system that our NOC uses. This is especially helpful for in the middle of the night issues. I can think of several instances in the past that if it weren't for the alerts from AppDynamics going to the NOC, we never would have caught them in time to avoid a major issue. So the SNMP trapping, however, isn't out of the box. You have to have an extension to do it, but AppDynamics does have a very healthy community of developers that's always creating new extensions for the application. We at Autotrader are using roughly 15 extensions, I think, today. And I expect at some point several of them will actually be consumed into the application. If any of you are familiar with the Apple jailbreaking community, I'm sure you'll understand what I'm talking about. By the way, anyone here see the Broncos-Patriots game earlier this week? One guy? Go Broncos. So everyone remembers the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, right? AI and automation, in my mind, go hand in hand these days. We write programs to handle situations so that we don't have to deal with them manually. HAL 9000 was created in order to help the crew of the Odyssey accomplish their mission. AppDynamics is kind of like Autotrader's at HAL 9000. The application has the ability to handle automated tasks in a set of health rules. At Autotrader, we were having some issues with swap space and CPU utilization, so we decided to start using AppDynamics to create some automated remediation tasks. Previously, when we got these alerts on the CPU and swap space, we would go into the box, bleed off traffic, and restart the app. Nowadays, we have AppDynamics watching the application, and when it senses a problem with those issues, it executes policy. This policy does several things, right? First, it goes and alerts the NOC, lets them know what's going on. Then it waits a few minutes and it executes a script. This script pulls the application from the load balancer, restarts the application, and then puts it back. In operations, often it's the small things that we really appreciate, right? Let's just hope that AppD 9000 doesn't become sentient and take over our application. Automation and performance testing. So this is an interesting field, and I think that as DevOps becomes more and more important and more global, this is going to get bigger and bigger. So since we're on the topic of automation, we live and breathe an industry that revolves around performance. Performance of cars, performance of websites, performance of sales. It would only make sense that we're obsessed with high-performing applications and delivering that high-performance experience to our users, right? We spend a lot of time performance testing our new features and updates, and we have an entire team dedicated to that. The team at AppDynamics has really given us quite a tool to help with our load testing, I think. Oftentimes, it helps us spot issues much faster, and things have definitely improved dramatically since we got started with it. Work smart, not hard, my father used to say. I love this picture because it kind of reminds me of how I try to live my life. I'm always trying to find new ways to make my job easier, and AppDynamics has really helped us do that. And it's definitely helped the performance team as well. They're now using the AppDynamics REST API to grab performance data and build functional tests to verify the performance. This helps the team obviously find the leaky hole quickly and plug it. So this is a perfect example of what I was talking about. If we look at the compare releases screen here, we notice a drastic improvement between tests. On the top of the screen, we have a test of one of our pages. We can see the response times were anywhere from 300 to 900 milliseconds. The performance team was using this data and worked with development to find the root cause and go ahead and fix it. After the second run, we can see on the bottom of the screen that response times dropped obviously below the 200 millisecond mark. One of the things I'll note is the compare release screen is used on a daily basis by our performance teams to compare performance tests. But the funny thing about this test was we had less load and higher response times than the second time around, which was lower load or higher load and less response times. So go figure, right? So deployment, vetting, and verification, or validation. On a regular basis, just like everybody else, we do deployments. These deployments can have a lot of dependencies, which can cause havoc if not properly controlled and tested beforehand. So at Autotrader, we try to test for every conceivable issue before we deploy a new set of code, but obviously, as I said before, no one's perfect, right? We've started using AppDynamics to help do several things for our deployments. So first, we have a pre-production environment that we monitor with AppDynamics to help us find these issues before we go live. This saves us on a regular basis from promoting bad code to production. I'm not allowed to tell you how often that happens. I'll probably be shamed into hiding, but I'm sure everyone has those problems, or at least I like to think they do. Once we've decided that we're ready to take the code to production, we utilize AppDynamics to monitor the deployments themselves, like I was saying earlier. So this is an example of one of the deployment dashboards I showed you earlier. They're extremely helpful at operations to make sure that things go smoothly. You'll notice a couple of gaps here in time in terms of the errors. I was told by AppDynamics actually that this just has to do with the way the agent gathers data. Apparently, if the agent doesn't see any change after a certain period of time, it doesn't report in that same metric. So after the deployment, we need to make sure that numbers don't go bad over time, right? How do we do that? At AppDynamics, they have a feature called Compare Releases we were just talking about that gives us a good indication of the trend. It allows you to compare two different time frames using the standard KPIs I was talking about earlier. We use this after every deployment as well as our dashboards. And one thing to consider is that after a certain period of time, though, the data does roll up and offer a little less granularity. It's for this reason that you obviously see the older time frame looks a little less jumpy and less granular there. We at Autotrader would like to see a little more granular data, but we understand that obviously there are limitations. One of my favorite. So the outside world is a dangerous and scary place. We never know who or what is going to attack us or cause us harm. There have been many times at Autotrader where we've been bitten by third-party products that we work with, and it's always involuntary, but it hurts our business nonetheless, right? So we started using AppDynamics to monitor outbound calls to and from those services to make sure that we're getting back the correct responses and load. And there are other opportunities out there, other API monitoring tools, but the fact that we can execute this within the tool obviously is extremely useful. So there's a few third parties that we work with on a regular basis that are consistently having issues. We were bitten by them several times before we implemented AppDynamics. Now that we have AppDynamics, while their issues haven't really stopped, we definitely are catching them before they can cause us major degradation. What's that saying? Hit me once, shame on you. Hit me twice, shame on me. Right? We try not to get hit. So native app optimization. World is going mobile. Let's face it, in today's world, it's no longer acceptable to have a good mobile experience, or at the very least, a mobile experience at all, right? We know that our customers are busy, and we know that they don't always have time to sit down at a computer and browse for the next car. Some of you may have seen our latest commercial. In the commercial, the customer uses the mobile app to find his next minivan. This is a perfect example of our fast-moving world today, and how important it is to stay up to speed with the times. For those of you who have not seen the commercial, you should, and trust me, I loathe commercials just as much as you guys do. So AppDynamics really helped Autotrader get a grip on what real-world users were experiencing with their native app. So they have an SDK that you can load into your code that sends back all sorts of useful information on a user base. When we first integrated AppDynamics, their mobile SDK was somewhat lacking, but they have come quite a ways since we started using them, and we do use them on a daily basis now. Here we have a dashboard as it gives us all these interesting metrics I was just referring to. I especially like the ability to see what types of mobile devices that are most prominent and which ones are causing the worst experience so that we can attack those quickly. I also think that AppDynamics does a great job of just being really, user-friendly and beautiful, especially in this type of stuff. And you can quickly find, where you have problems. So mobile site performance. Continuing along those mobile lines, for those companies that don't have a native app, but do have a mobile site, Autotrader does have both. So we have experience on both sides of the mobile scene. This tool allows us to see our mobile experience is stacking up for users who don't necessarily, like I said, want to download yet another app. The mobile site tracking works similarly to the normal web experience. In AppDynamics, it's the same, it tracks the same metrics, same errors, and allows for the same type of alerting and troubleshooting. And as you saw earlier, mobile usage is on the rise drastically, so this type of monitoring is becoming very important to us. So let's kind of take a step back and kind of talk about all that we've talked about here today. So Autotrader had several issues with its current monitoring experience. It really needed a unified tool that both business and IT could understand and use. AppDynamics has provided that for us with a user experience that's unrivaled. Their tool gives us the flexibility to deep dive into the nitty-gritty and find the real source of the problem, but still providing our executives with high-level data on how all our systems interact overall. The unique ability of the tool to see both high-level and low-level data in one application has really helped all of our teams collaborate better and work faster to solve problems. We know that we can feel safe that monitoring is helping us catch considerably more problems than we were before, and we know that we can catch them before they become a huge issue. We know that when things really go south, we also have somewhere to look to help us figure out the problem quickly. And above all, it's allowed Autotrader to work faster, more efficiently, and produce a better experience for our consumers in the automotive marketplace. So, next steps. Where are we going next with AppDynamics? What are we trying to accomplish? So we have some agenda items that we're working on to better integrate the application. One of the biggest initiatives right now for us is getting the application into our lower environments. The sooner we catch these issues in our lower environments, the less likely, obviously, we are to give a degraded experience. We already started this process, like I discussed earlier, and we have seen great results so far. Another step that we're currently working on is integrating our microservices platforms with the tool. This has proven an interesting task, and we're still working on it, so I'd be curious to hear some of how you guys are handling this problem. So our third major initiative with AppDynamics is how we get these agents upgraded automatically. If you watched the keynote earlier, I believe it was earlier today or yesterday, you noticed that the tool is working on getting an automated upgrade in place. But in the meantime, we had to find some way to deal with it on our own. So we set up an automated tool that helps us put the application agent into our, we set up an automated tool that helps us put the agent into all of our servers with the build. We do have other applications that don't necessarily have a build yet, and so it's a little tedious with some of those, but we're working on some automated scripts to fix that issue. So thanks everyone for their time today. You guys have been great listeners, and I appreciate you willing to listen to me drone on and on about AppDynamics. If there's any questions I can answer in the time I have left. Go ahead. For the what? Oh, yes. So currently today, we're doing our alerting by hand, so we know which systems need to have certain alerts, and we know which third parties are more active with issues, so we tend to spend our time focusing on those more so than everything else. We are going to get to the point where we're setting up alerts automatically on all of our tiers at once, but we're still not quite there yet today. So we're working towards using Puppet, but from an automation standpoint, we're using more like the Mavens and Jenkins to build the functional tests and gather the data from AppDynamics to go with those tests for our load testing. Go ahead. So the biggest challenge, I think, with the tool has been probably getting resources together to use the tool and to configure it. It definitely is an excellent application, but let me kid you not, it is a complicated piece of machinery that definitely needs more than one person. I've seen several teams that have dedicated teams just to AppDynamics, and it seems to work really well for them. So I think for us, it's going to be really just having enough people to really focus on it. I'm sorry? Kind of. Not entirely just me, but not enough. Go ahead. I believe we're running roughly 330 agents between both environments. Yes. Sure. So we're running several different extensions today. So one of our tiers is Solar. This is we use for our search engine farm, right? So they have an extension that gives us quite a bit of data from Solar. We found that to be extremely useful. There's also the SNMP trap extension I was talking about. There's several database extensions that we use. There's a lot of machine agent data that you can get from using extensions that you wouldn't normally get from the base machine agent. A lot of Linux, there's a Linux monitoring extension that gives you a lot more process level information and whatnot. I'm trying to think what other ones we're using. There's a network monitoring extension we're using. So I think there's a few more, but like I was saying earlier, they have a great community for extensions. I can remember actually it was the Solar agent, the Solar monitoring extension. When it first was sent out to me, there was actually a bug in it, and they were using an old code class that had been deprecated. I asked about it, and I think a day and a half later, they had fixed it, and I had a new agent. So there's definitely plenty of support for those. So we're happy with most of the data we're getting at the moment. We'd like to use the database monitoring tool, but we already have monitoring tools in place at the moment today that gives us pretty good information, so we haven't had a real need to use it heavily. As we move into a more integrated environment with AppDynamics and Splunk and some of the other integrations that we're looking at, we may move into something like that, but today we haven't used it nearly as much as we probably should. Any other questions? So if there's any other questions that you don't get answered, please feel free to email me on morgan.white@autotrader.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I can for you. Thanks.
No, thank you. Thank you. We have 1.3 people on that now?
Ish.
And that's 3.1. All I know is the second one on.
You were looking at your
I was
phone.
looking at my phone, I was nothing. I looked, I was like,
Hey man, nice job.
Thank you.
you're here. I just got in today.
You have no idea.
Yes, first time I